The
Great, I think we can get started. Hi everyone, we are so excited for this session. I'm Yuna, I'm a social improvement director at an agency called Five Room. And today we are speaking with three amazing panelists about retail and data. And I'll just let you know this is going to be the best session you attend today and tomorrow, so listen up. We'll just go quickly and introduce the panelists, and then would love to hear quickly from the group where everyone's from, if you're on the brand side, if you're on the agency side, are you part of an analytics team? So we'll do a quick survey after we intro the panelists. So we'll start with Josh.
Hey everyone, Josh Martin. I'm Director of Digital and Social Media at Arby's. I've been there going on 5 years, and essentially I oversee content on the digital side, our website, email, mobile text, and then on all of our social media, managing all the content and some paid media on our social channels.
Hi, I'm Laura Davis-Taylor. Okay. I'm EVP of Customer Experience at Max Media, and I come from a weird background, which is sort of a unique viewpoint today, which is brand planning on the traditional agency side, interactive marketing, then store design, physical store design, and then future store and experience design.
And we work together.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. And I work on the brand side. I'm Kelly Hackett. I work at AT&T. My title is Digital Marketing Innovation, and I got to make up my own title, which was awesome. But really, my job is to bring to life first-to-market experiences that are inside the retail environment or outside. So
That's the title.
Is that fun?
It's a good title.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And then previously, I worked at a bunch of agencies, so have an agency background.
Fun. Awesome. So let's hear from you all. In the room, can we see a show of hands for folks who are on the brand side? Are you working at a brand? Great. And on, I guess, the technology side, platform side, any folks there? Okay, great. A couple of folks here. All right, of those, are y'all with any analytics firms? Oh, great. Okay, one over there. Which firm are you with? Perfect. Okay, cool. And for those on the brand side, any of your titles encompass data or insights research? No. Okay. Great. Cool. So that being said, I think we can start kicking off. We've got some questions here, but feel free if you have any questions, if you want to add to the discussion, feel free to jump in as well. We'll keep this pretty conversational. So this is such a great topic because it's so big. So we're going to start to try to whittle it down because data for retailers can mean so many different things, right? We're here at Social Shakeup where, of course, there's social data, but our three panelists are dealing with data much beyond the vanity metrics we're seeing from Facebook and Twitter. So let's start down the line and start talking about data. What data are you looking at your respective organizations? And sorry, that's a big question. So, Josh, I'm going to put all the pressure on your shoulders right now.
Okay. In terms of data, in my role, and I focus a lot of my time in social media. So we're spending a lot of time looking at social media data. And about a year ago, we decided to make an investment, a stronger investment in our social media platforms and team. And we converted one of our conference rooms into kind of a what we call a social media listening room. So we blew out the walls, put up glass doors, glass walls, and we've got 4 big monitors, and we're streaming in social data in real time as it's happening. So the problem that I had at Arby's when I first started was being able to, evangelize social outside of what our team was doing. I came into Arby's where most of the people there have been there 20, 30 years, and they think social, they just think I'm in an office playing on Facebook all day, and it's a little bit more than that. So just being able to show them, how they could potentially leverage social and the impact that it could make and drive the business. So a year ago, we went all in, brought more of the listening in-house, hired a couple of team members. So now we're kind of mining that data. Again, it's sparking a lot of questions in the room. So we show the data in visual form, and different pulses. So operations walks by, or guest support walks by, or PR walks by, they're seeing this stuff and coming and asking us questions. So long story short, basically we're mining social data to try to drive actionable insights for the business. So certainly we look at the data in terms of our engagement and this post worked better than this post, let's change focus there. But really we're trying to find nuggets of information to bring to different parts of the business. So if we see that some people keep saying, I don't like mayonnaise on this brisket sandwich, we're able to find that information and give it to the product development team, and they're able to make changes, which is really cool. So that's kind of how we're leveraging data at Arby's and mostly in the social space.
You deal with the funnest data. Too many pickles, too much mayo, not enough mayo. Love it. We'll go down.
Poor mayonnaise.
Laura, what kind of data are you working with?
There's the stuff that we're working with that's available, and there's stuff that we're working with in the lab, and it's sort of a loaded topic. But having been part of jobs where omnichannel was part of my title, it's a great concept, but if you're going to do omnichannel marketing, you have to do omnichannel analytics, right? And try doing that in reality versus theory. It's very difficult. So what we try and look at is, first of all, the places where people are, the home life of the store, and then the platforms, whether they're online in the whole world of Clickstream, whether on mobile and doing some kind of activity on, I don't know what you call it, mobile stream, or if they're in the store and they're doing something physically in the store. But then you have an additional layer, which is kind of the lenses, and we're really trying to help everybody start to embrace, which is the behavioral, like what really are they doing, but emotional, how are they feeling? And we'll talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's starting to emerge to help us with that. But then transactional, what are they buying? Because it comes down to the fact that where we always used to plan against a path, people today that live digital lives don't have a path. They create the path every time they shop. So if we want to do omni-channel planning and understand what they're doing most consistently, we have to be able to stitch these different data streams together and get a holistic view. But once again, the theory is fantastic.
I love that. I mean, you're dealing with, I think, what people are, as you said, theorizing about right now, and I'm sure y'all in the room have thought about what the perfect world situation would be, and it's Laura, you and your team are doing big strides in that world.
Trying.
And Kelly, what kind of data are you working with at AT&T?
We have a wealth of data. So we are lucky enough to have like a big data team. So there's a whole entire team that we do not work on. I don't know the first thing about it, but that are taking all of the information that we have as a company and figuring out how to leverage it best. Not just for ourselves, but for other companies. Then within the marketing department, we have an analytics and insights team. And we have larger initiatives like ongoing, like models, like gross ad models. And so we can tell what's the best media to purchase, what's the best message to go after in that media, what drives traffic, what drives sales. So we are lucky enough to have like models. The team tells my CMO all about them, so I don't have to be the one that talks about them at all. It's just, yeah, remember the smart people came in and said this is why we're messaging it. But then down to mostly what the data and analytics I work with that are on a campaign level. So there's an initiative going on, it has a beginning and an end, and trying not just to figure out what's the cool thing we're gonna go do, but we absolutely don't want to do it unless we can figure out a way to measure it. And that's been really challenging over the years because you have these agencies coming to you with these awesome ideas and they say, well, we absolutely can't measure it because it's never been done before. And so what we learned is that everything's measurable. It's when you break a project down in its parts and pieces, even though it's never been done together, it probably has been done separately. And trying to figure out what's the objective, which seems it seems easy, but sometimes it's harder than you think. How are we going to measure it? And working with my analytics team that we agree we're going to measure what we set up. How are we going to make sure that we prove we did what we said we were going to do? And what are those metrics that is going to prove it? And everything else we collect and look at just for fun and to have more learnings. But really, I want that story. So it changes depending on what initiative we're doing, but it definitely is not the same. We have those internal arguments where people want to measure the exact same things for every campaign and compare them all. But when you're doing more of the digital innovation, like something that's unique or an engagement, it can't be those just typical cookie cutter metrics. So it kind of depends on what we're trying to do.
I love this panel because between the three panelists, you're working with seriously all types of data here. You name it, it seems like one of these folks or all of them are touching it. And we started talking a little bit about this. So we're talking about social data, behavioral data. We're talking about campaign insight data. We started. You mentioned, Josh, you've got a team at Arby's that you've started bringing in house to bring this listening in. Let's talk a little bit about the folks who are doing the mining. How does that team look like, and what are their qualifications? What does the modern day retail data team look like?
Yeah, for us, I think it's still something we're trying to solve for. So I have a research background, so generally I enjoy data and can geek out on jumping into our platforms and mining it. Really we have a small, nimble team. Really, it's me and another person that's helping me in social, and I have another person that's handling more of the digital side. So we've really leveraged our partners that we use NetBase as our social listening platform, and within that platform we buy hours of analyst time to help us kind of mine that data. Again, there's so much data that we have. I mean, just the amount that we're measuring and coming in, and to be able to go and find those nuggets of information that we want to take action on, takes some work. I think so we're leveraging our partners. When we can hire for it, we try to hire for it. I think somebody that, at least in my space, we want somebody that has understanding of social, but also has some data analytics background, which is a tough person to find. I think certainly there's a lot of people out there that can crunch the numbers and they're great, but they may not have the side to understand social and understand some of the nuances of what people are saying in the social space. So it's a process, I'd say, of trying to find the right person and also being able to justify. I'd love to hire 5 analysts that can just I can put them in that room all day and they can just mine data and just find tons of information. But unfortunately, I don't have that kind of capability. So being able to prioritize our time and leverage a partner where we can to be able to dig out those nuggets for us is crucial.
Great. Laura, who's doing the data mining on your team?
It's also sort of a wonky group, but we think it's the right group, and we have the typical data analysts, the people who can actually just pull out and crunch the data, but also people like myself that just worked across all different channels of retail for a really long time and kind of understand shopper psychology, where you can see something and go, that's kind of weird. What might have caused that, and what can we learn from that? And then we also have a behavioral psychologist on staff who humbles us daily. And that's really interesting because she has no knowledge of marketing. She knows nothing about marketing. All she knows is how to look at things and people's behavior and data and crunch it in a weird way to say, wow, there's this causation thing happening. There's a human insight here we need to understand. So it's very new, and we're also a fairly small agency. I used to work at BBS Kelly years ago, and I used to sit inside the Worth, which is tons and tons of data analysts. It's fun to be able to take something that's been done for a long time and give it new lenses, once again, to use that word, and go a little deeper to find things maybe a little bit more meaningful.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I was speaking with the CMO at Alex and Ani the other day, and he told me, Ryan.
He's crazy.
Oh
he's
my
cool.
God. Oh, I've got a drinks with him on Thursday. I think I'm going to take PTO on Friday.
Yeah.
He's that crazy. But on his team, he's got a digital team of 60 folks, and I asked him how he's hiring folks for his team, and he's actually hiring quite a lot of finance people in New York for similar reasons, the data side, crunching it and looking at different ways outside of the marketing lens. Oh,
Yeah, we have, I think that we haven't cracked the code yet on that because we have some really talented data crunchers, but I find when I get these reports back that they are just, this was successful and this was not successful, but there's no context around it, there's no why. And that's what I want. And so a lot of times someone on my team has to, the data team is like, has to work hand in hand. Really, like, show me the numbers, let me see what pops to me, and then let's go dig into that, because that's interesting. It's why did one brand win over us when it's something we sponsored or something, just to give an example. There isn't just, well, you lost and they won. No, I want to know why. Why is that? And maybe we have to go do more research around it to get to the heart of it, but that context is so important, and unless you're like living the project or and have that deep understanding of marketing, then it's not a popular thing to say, especially in this panel, but I'm more of a gut instinct person. And so the data doesn't always have to, I learn from it. I'd rather it say I did something wrong and why than that, oh, it was perfect. And that when you're going into your bosses and you're just constantly saying, the data shows my campaign was successful. That I don't really think they believe you. I think it's like you actually I get more support and more money to do more things by going in and saying, here's what I did, and here's the parts that were really good, but here's what I did. That I had no idea that this was going to be an issue, or I learned something new, and so that's fascinating. Can we go do something else that kind of hits into this insight or something?
Yeah, and you touched upon something that we had discussed prior, which is there a conflict of interest when you're executing and reporting at the same time? I'm sure a lot of the brands in the room, when you work with agencies, you're oftentimes getting the same the metrics back from the same agency that had done the execution. But are they showing the data cleanly? Is it a little bit skewed?
Yeah, I think you can manipulate data to tell your story how you want it to tell it. I think having a research background, I can go look at the data too and say, well, that's not, you're kind of spinning the data in your favor a little bit, certainly. So, I love it for an agency, and you don't see a lot of them do that. Look at data and say, something they worked on and say, hey, we did this, it didn't work, we just didn't work. And that's okay. I'm as a client, as someone working on the brand side, I would love for an agency to say, hey, we tried this, it flopped big time, we're not going to spin the data and try to manipulate it where it says, well, this didn't work because of this, and this, or that type of thing. So I'm looking for that type of. It's okay, I think. In our group, we try to test, learn, and optimize. So if we did something and it didn't work, then that's okay. I want you to say, hey, it didn't work.
Yeah, I love this theme that's popping up. And actually, I don't know if anyone had attended the 10 a.m. session on customer engagement, but the gentleman from eConsultancy had actually mentioned the same exact thing, that when they're measuring ROI, they're seeing, you are seeing overlaps between execution and reporting teams, and that could create conflicts of interest. And he's starting to see some clients of his, branch off individual analytics teams to make sure that the story is properly being told. Would love to know a little bit. So Josh, you already said you've got this wonderful net-based dashboard, right, in your offices. But how else are you viewing data in your organizations? Are you still looking at PowerPoints, PDFs? What format can you summarize all this in? Because, gosh, there's so much of it. How do you make it meaningful in a visual story?
Mine is more very focused. It's this execution, this project. I know what Josh looks at. It's like you have so much data and you're kind of trying to pull out the pieces of it. Where mine, I feel like, is a lot more focused on. We might have a bunch of data, but what I'm asking, I want to report on this specific thing. And then it comes back down. We're a PowerPoint company, so we get everything in PowerPoint. But I think a lot of times that people because we're turning and burning so much, people just want to email those PowerPoint decks out, and it just kind of goes by, and all of that work and all those insights kind of get lost. So I think we have to go out of our way to meet about it and roll up our sleeves and talk about what it means and how we're going to apply what we learned to the next thing. Because I think it's data for data's sake to say, oh, I have a huge analytics team and we get all this data, but what did you do with it this year?
Yeah.
Nothing really. I just kind of went by my gut. No, you've got to, it's no, I learned this and then I changed what I was going to do next. And to be able to show that, I think, is really important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we've tried to move away from that, just data for data's sake. I think, if you follow fast food, it moves pretty fast. We have a new promotion every month, a new sandwich every month, just like every other QSR out there. And our agencies would spend, I don't know how many hours putting together a comprehensive report of all the media, the the posts we did, and it would be this 100-page PowerPoint deck, and they'd spend 2 hours in a meeting going through it with us, and at the end of the day, we never got any insights out of it, and then even if we did get insights, we never applied them to the next thing. So, we tell them, don't send us reports unless there's something actionable. And so, our website is pretty standard, and we used to get 50-page reports every month on our website data, and a lot of it doesn't really change that much. So, unless things are changing or if it's something we didn't know, we basically said, we'd rather you spend your time more efficiently and effectively than creating a report where there's no really actionable insight. So we really push our partners now in our agencies to, if you're sending over, data, or let's have an executive summary of, what are the 3 key stories. And if there's not a story, then there's not a story. Just tell us that.
Yeah.
Website's going great. Didn't crash. People are still coming. Let's keep moving on.
But I think that's the difference between a marketer and if you're just a numbers person, to where, and when I say, what's my story, they're like, what do you mean, what's the story? And it's like, okay, what would you go and tell your CMO? Like, you don't just throw out some numbers. What's the story that you want to tell? Was it successful or was it not? Why was it successful or not? And that is really hard. That's why I don't think you can just section off data into another team who's only good at number crunching, because you don't get a story out of it.
Yeah.
We were rehearsing for this or going to questions. I shared my favorite quote, which I share all the time, which is Robin Waters, who was the head of Trends and Insights at Target, always says that data is like bikinis. It's what they hide that matters the most. It's so true. And it's funny when you do a lot of work with colleges and stuff like that, and you ask the kids in the marketing classes, so are you guys kind of looking at data from both sides of the brain? There's very few that are even taught how to think like this. Northwestern does a great job. I have a good friend that's a teacher. He's from the Budweiser account. And he said they're trying to, this is interesting, what he says is really great marketers have amazing guts, but you can't prove a gut, so you have to have data to prove it so you can win your case. And then he says, and I got a second one here. He's actually teaching Silicon Valley classes on refining your gut. And his point was that you can't teach someone gut, but you can make someone's gut better. And then figure out how to make sure that you can tell your story so the CFO says yes. And it's really true. And I was telling the group, we do a lot of work with Cisco, and they've got all these new tools coming out. I'm sure some of you guys have seen all this stuff with Wi-Fi analytics, and hey, someone's in your store, you can track everywhere they go. Aside from the privacy stuff, when you get into the data of stuff like that, it is such massive volumes of noise, and you got to connect that to other channels of data. And then they come back to you and they give you a brick for a report. It's like 70 pages going on, because no one sat down and said, so who are the constituents who are going to read this report? What are their KPIs? And if you had like a New York Minute, what would you say? And they have all these tech guys doing the reports, and they're like, well, what's a KPI for a store? You're like, you know way more than me, this isn't working, And that's kind of part of it, is how do we start to cultivate more holistic thinkers around this? Because we were saying, I'm the last person that wants to do the data, but I know what I want out of the data, right? And that's half of it, is get those two brains together with the guy who raised the check. Because in P&G always says, we fund well what we measure well. So if you start with, don't even bring it up, you can't find, what do you say, Kelly, a way to measure it. Even if it's just initial gauge, it's just not going to roll if you can't measure it in some way.
Yeah.
It's because I've been in meetings with my CMO where he's like, I don't like it. I'm like, I love it. I like it. And so if I had some data to throw at him, then he really can't say, if everyone else likes it, I don't know, no. But it's just a little more support, other than, it's this did well, or I have, with this data, I can project this will do well. So it's worth taking risks.
Right. All this conversation, I think, sparks curiosity around actual stories of how your data has helped consumer engagement. Any specific examples of how you saw something, you saw the story and turned it into a meaningful action with the consumer or consumers? Any fun stories you want to share?
In one of my previous jobs, I focused on sponsorship advertising, and over the years in collecting data, what we see, we got a lot of insights on college football fans, and they, it's something that you see every Saturday when football season, where someone's like, oh man, I wish I was in Athens. Oh man, I wish I could get tickets to the game. Or you can almost predict the conversation that's happening during football season. So, and I know Josh has done some of the same work, but so for the next football season, last year we created a Surprise and Delight program that we did not advertise at all. We did not promote it at all. But it was truly around that insight that we got from listening and just social listened and then dropped in with, not just what that person asked for, but 10 times better, set up a tricked out tailgate with TVs and Wi-Fi's and, that kind of thing, or a trip to the national championship game. So it's not super data, but from social listening that taught us it actually, we use it to apply what our strategy is going to be for the next year.
Awesome. That sounds fun.
It was really fun.
Yeah, and we have several examples at Arby's, and we like to listen to what our customers are saying and hopefully make it actionable. So a couple years ago, we noticed a lot of people were asking about, people are really passionate about sauces. If you go to a restaurant, I know people love Chick-fil-A sauce, Arby's sauce. We see that in social. People are asking for it if we sold in bottles. So we took that insight to our product development team, and they had a limited run of bottled Horsey sauce and Arby's sauce that they ran. And it's just incremental money that we found a nugget and they made it, and it just added to our franchisees' bottom line if they sold it. And then last year, certain times it's to validate certain hunches. If anybody's familiar with the Meat Mountain story that we had, so we've always wanted a secret menu item, and at Arby's that we've never had one. And so our new campaign is we have the meats. We have this poster in the restaurant that has all the meats just stacked on top of each other. It's this tall. It has like chicken, roast beef, turkey. It's to hopefully provide the insight for people when they come in that Arby's has more than just roast beef. And our managers were saying that people are going to try to order this sandwich with all the meats on it, and our PD team, CMO, are like, no, nobody's going to do that. We're not going to spend time to build a sandwich. And I went and looked at some of the social data. Sure enough, I got an Instagram shot of the guy taking a picture of the floor stand and said, Arby's, my body is ready for this. And so we take that data and give it back to them, saying, hey, no, people are asking for this. Let's make it. So the PD team goes and builds this a sandwich with literally all the meats, and you can go to Arby's and say, I want the Meat Mountain. They'll charge you $10. It's a sandwich with all our meats on it. So, I mean, and
how much is that?
We charge $10, and we
that's a steal.
In our corporate store, so we end up selling 30,000 of those in like a month. So you imagine that's how much money that we made, and people are still going to order it. I mean, it's and just because normally if we hadn't gone in and looked at the data, social, and saw people really asking for it, maybe we'd have not even made that sandwich.
Was your campaign though was all social media, or was that also broadcast? Because I hadn't heard that.
No, since it was a secret menu item, we don't if you're familiar with secret menu items, you can go to Starbucks and say something and they'll make it. So it's something we never did publicize. We just created it, so we didn't advertise it at all. It was just kind of spread by word of mouth, and then, I think the Washington Post picked up on it. They wrote about it. So you can Google Meat Mountain and see all these people with pictures, but we don't put it on our website. We don't ever talk about it on social. It's just one of those things that you can go and order. So that came from just leveraging social data and just being smart about listening and mining for it and looking to see if people were actually asking for it, and they were.
Awesome. Everyone's running after those to grab a $10 Meat Mountain. Laura, I would love to hear from you, dealing with all sorts of data you're working with. Anything fun come out of your insights?
Yeah, this is a fringe one. I can't say the brand, but I don't work on it anymore. But when I was a consultant, I spent 3 years working with a home improvement brand that's not in town. Okay? And we were doing a whole bunch of future store stuff. It was great because I had 20 stores and about 25 CPGs to do tons of what ifs. And it was all testing on what type of in-store digital could we do to affect the experience and to create buying behaviors. And so one of the things we had was 5 different digital signage channels at different sizes of screens and heights, and even types of one-way versus interactivity. And we were able to test out the gaze tracking technology, super anonymous. And it was coming out of Israel at the time. It's still out there. It's actually becoming very, very popular. But they're able to track how many people are around a particular point, and it's like online opportunity to see traffic, kind of the same thing. And when a face looks towards something, it tracks it the way, this is crazy, how frogs see. Frogs only see when something moves. Isn't that neat? So it tracks that something happened. It takes a JPEG every 10th of a second and it checks it out. So it's completely just a face was here. And then what we were doing is we were taking the content playlist and we were taking the timestamp for every single gaze to the timestamp of the content, and we were doing optimization, well, not optimization, but basically how many people actually have an opportunity to see something, how many look, because we're trying to see like banner ads, what type of stuff gets people to actually look at these new formats in the store, because if they don't look, how are you ever going to sell, right? You can't create an experience if someone doesn't care about it. So we started learning interesting things that, like, when people are moving fast in the store, like in a racetrack area, you've got to do kind of more slow messages because they're moving quickly, they're distracted. If they're standing at a counter, you can start to do fast, cool video messages, but the longest we ever saw anybody look at anything was 8 seconds. And the average is 1 to 2 seconds. So we also learned that this is amazing for like a direct marketing channel, but you have to understand that it's like a glance media unless they're still. And then it can be more of an interactive thing. And we saw stuff happen like double increase in sales if the product was super interesting. And the crazy thing was the most popular color to attract gaze was orange.
Oh.
But it's so interesting. Oh my God, it's so cool to learn things like this because you never would have thought about it because you just don't know how people are going to respond to new things until they're out there. And that's the beauty of some of these new technologies is what people say and what they do is usually very, very different. And we do a lot of neuropsychology work because of that. And we don't realize that 85% of our, some people say 95% of our buying decisions are made subconsciously. So if we're able to start looking at this data from additional lenses, like what really are people doing when it's not being reported, we're just actually passively tracking it, you're missing some interesting things. So that's kind of a French story.
That's awesome. So all this data, you're investing in it. It sounds pretty expensive, and even from the campaign execution, you're paying for the agency's time to execute the reporting as well. How are you funding this? How are your organizations justifying ROI for data, and knowing that tomorrow the data is going to get richer and more costly to review? Is there a formula within your organizations that says, all right, data plus?
No, I think for us and leveraging social data, I think it's we've made the case that it's a must-have. Certainly, we've leveraged the use of our social platform or the social data that we're capturing, the tools we're using, and justifying with some of the success stories we've had through the franchisee. So it's coming out of my budget, and I built it in. For me, it's just table stakes. Like I think we need to have this for us to be effective, and we've made the case in 2014 with the great stories that we've had for the brand. So, and we kind of measure it by just, the media exposure that these initiatives have received. So the sauces got picked up in media. The Meat Mountain we did was great. The Pharrell moment was kind of rooted in listening and just monitoring and paying attention. So, we use those stories to package up the justification of that spend to our franchisees. So, when we go to ask money from our franchisees, explaining the great success stories we've had with those moments, it makes it a little bit easier for us. But for us, it's I view it as table stakes in terms of this helps our team run efficiently, and it's proven itself by some of the wins we've had in the space.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't feel like I have any issues whatsoever justifying the cost. I feel like my leadership all the way up is super supportive, expects to see data, very supportive of it. They get it helps to make a lot of decisions. So the investment that they've made into it, it's not even something that we talk about anymore. But if there's something that I'm doing that there's a new way to measure it, that we don't currently have something going already, which is pretty rare, it would come right out of my production budget. I wouldn't even think twice. It's so important. You would have to be able to measure it, that it would just be, well, I'm going to do a little, we won't be shooting in LA, we'll shoot in Atlanta. Or, we'll have to, I'd rather make some sacrifices on the production side than on not being able to measure it.
I think if there's a soundbite to be had from that, it's AT&T loves data.
We love data.
How about yourself,
It depends on the client and who the client is representing, whether it's merchandising versus marketing versus innovations. It really just depends. We push for it, and we're pushing to try and offer it more from, I guess the best way to put it is machine learning versus bodies. It's expensive when you have to put a lot of people on retainer to crunch data, and it's very profitable. We both in the agency, so it's profitable. But there's so many new tools coming out there that can help us do that without as many bodies. And we're trying to push that because if you can't measure it back to what we're saying, you can't prove whether it worked. And what they look for is typically different. I mean, the project I was just talking about before, all they cared about was the same-store sales increase of 1.5%. That's it. Don't need anything else. The rest of it is just your business. Is it getting my sales up 1.5% per store? Yes or no?
Yeah.
In other cases, it's I need every single thing, and I need lots of stuff, and we're willing to pay for it because we're going to resell it as value to the people who are having fun with this thing. So, press forward.
Yeah, of course. So I want to ask this question. I think we had a lot of fun with it before on the call. Ideal world scenario. You've got this data. What's the ideal scenario for your retail to your retail organization to make the most of this data? You know, and the example I gave was AT&T. This is my 19th iPhone, and I think by now AT&T should have enough data on me that they know that it's about time I get kicked off my insurance. Surion just kicked me off because I filed too many claims. So, should I expect them to start pinging me, knowing that I'm probably going to file for a claim suit? At what point, is it too creepy? What is the ideal world scenario for you to work with data to provide the best experience for your customer?
Yeah, for us at Arby's, I think it's all about being contextually relevant for the consumer. I think for us, in the ideal world, we're trying to get the right message from the right person at the right time. And certainly within the bounds of how that consumer is comfortable. So I certainly think we provide, whether if they download an Arby's app or connect with us some way, we provide them the controls of what they want to share with us. And then, ultimately we should be smarter about delivering a more personalized experience because we know so much about them, right? So if I know you like beef and cheddars, and that's your go-to, and you don't like, you've never ordered a fish sandwich, and you don't like, why would I waste an email or an ad if I know your location? Why would I send that to you? Where I could be a really tailored message about, hey, it's almost lunchtime. If you're hungry for beef, if you're driving by and you've allowed us to ping your app, hey, beef and cheddars are 2 for $5. We're running a special if you're interested, that type of thing. So I think people are comfortable with that. I think, but as marketers like to do, we like to ruin things. So when we get a lot of data, and make people uncomfortable. So I think it's a fine balance for us. I think the ideal world is hopefully we're getting the right message, at the right time to the right person, and making that connection meaningful. And if we're spending money to do that, if we're doing it in an efficient way.
Right time meaning in the mood for a beef and cheddar.
Yeah. Exactly.
What perfect worlds, what ideal worlds are y'all building towards?
Well, I mean, what you just said is absolutely perfect. It's being able to pick up a tray and act like a great concierge, you know what I mean? But that person also knows when to be appropriate, and that you're not going to always want to engage with the same brands the same way, and you need to have the controls on that. Ideally, we're able to serve things up across all channels the way someone like an Amazon does. I saw a study last week that was saying that there's all these people out there, particularly millennials, who would actually like to shop in an Amazon physical store because they've so set the expectation for certitude. And that's very interesting. But it's about anticipating what people might want and give it to them in the context and the ways that they appreciate and expect. And Coke always says this, and I do love it. It's about becoming irrationally loyal to a brand because you earn it, But when you start to get into some of the research around the retail, we are all these people. How many people are going to let every retailer have every facet of data about you, including your physical body and physical stores? And I mean, we're able to read emotions with these things now too. It's really technology that can identify you when you walk into a store by your ear shape or by the algorithms of your face. It's been out there for years, and it's amazing because there's a lot of this stuff that's already out there. We just haven't realized it. That makes people uncomfortable because that's a relationship you didn't ask to be part of. And that's really the opportunity, but also the challenge for us, and helping people understand that if you give me the opportunity to have that value exchange, we can serve you better, but you need to have the controls for it.
Yes. I think it's unique just because I have so much data on each of our customers, and I can't always use it legally. But that is totally up to the consumer how much I can use of it. And I hopefully, I mean, it depends on how old you are and how comfortable you are. You grew up getting digital banners served to you, and you like that the banners know where you've shopped and that it's getting more and more personalized. And you might be someone who would be more opt in for, let me look around in your profile, let me see that you're break the iPhone every 6 months and it's month 5, and let me give you a discount on one, or there's the potential is there. It's just how do it's this data at my fingertips that I can't legally use completely. So I think what we're trying to do is take a step back, like don't ignore it, but how can we make it a little more not like we want to get it very personalized and individualized, but from a legal perspective, can we take a little tiny step back and generalize a little more so that we can still make you feel like we're focusing on you without it creeping you out?
Yeah, I love that you guys are starting to talk about privacy. Do you feel like in your respective industries, your verticals, that privacy laws are being written fast enough to encompass, all the new data that we are seeing and receiving and creating every day? And how, I think, Laura, you have some fun stories around data, right? Around privacy.
No, we're not. And I can't believe it's been 4 years, but 4 years ago when we started doing this stuff, I started working with the World Privacy Forum with a what-if scenario with this great woman named Pam Dixon, who is the head of it. And she about flipped her gourd when she heard about some of the stuff that's out there, because her point was, it's all fine and good till it's Suri Cruise. You wait till it's some movie star's kid and someone abuses that, and you've got images and you've got all this different stuff, and then you even get into the ability to stand in front of something and it can basically estimate your age, race, your gender, and then start to serve up different messages based on who you are. And you get into all kinds of profiling stuff around that. And then you have stuff like, I was to mention the Wi-Fi analytics, where we don't realize that if you have your cell phone on, whether you have your Bluetooth open or you're connected into Wi-Fi, you can still sniff out a MAC address and track somebody. And it's not even just inside the store, it's when they walk by your store, there's a new metric called door conversion, where they can say, this MAC address went to Macy's, and then they walked by your store and didn't come in. And now they're starting to scramble MAC addresses and this and that. But that's great stuff to have if you're trying to serve somebody. But if not, it could be cataclysmic because everyone's doing it because they can, not because they should. So what happens is if we don't get on top of this, do it responsibly, and have the right laws in place, government's going to take over. And then we're all up to grade. And then we can never do all these wonderful things because it's going to be shut down on us. And that's the scary part is if people think you're being alarmist when you talk like that, but you're not. We're just trying to make sure it doesn't get cut out because people are abusing it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think that's wonderful that you worked on that initiative because you're absolutely right. The organization, the privacy laws are just not being written fast enough for the data. How about in the AT&T world? I'm guessing there's quite a lot of regulation, as you just mentioned, around what you can and cannot do. What are some examples of some of the data that you're not allowed to touch from your customers?
Any of their personal information. Like there's, your information is very safe from the marketing evil people. So, if you're already a customer, our direct marketing team actually has like different levels of, how deepness that is not even a word, that they can go into someone's account and make sure that they're serving people messages or giving them updates on their account that really you need to know. But so I think it's just different levels depending on what your role is in the company, and obviously like a customer service person can get in there and figure out what's, how to serve you best. So I think we're trying as a company to come together and have one cohesive strategy so that the people who have the most knowledge and that frontline person can really give you a personalized experience. And then as you get a little further out, for me to get the insights out of that. So not the individual data, but the general insight about our customers and what they want so that we can tailor our marketing campaigns toward that.
Makes sense, makes sense. How about in the food world?
Yeah, we're not as advanced, I'd say, as the telecommunications. So it's very early on for us. And certainly the data we collect is people that sign up for our email program and our other loyalty programs. We're kind of getting in crazy territory is with working with partners that are, for us, we want to understand who's coming to our restaurants and to our that grid. So we're getting close to being able to tie if you saw an ad, we can be able to see your phone and know if you actually came by an Arby's or not. So we're looking at it, are we getting efficient spends in terms of the ads we're putting out there? So if it's tagging you and you actually went to an Arby's, that's pretty good ROI right there if we know you were in our kind of four walls. So that's the kind of the data we're getting into now is really looking at when we serve up somebody a message, are we actually converting them to go in the restaurant? It's all based upon your phone.
Cool, cool. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to the group for any questions for the panelists. Sure.
Where and how are you guys thinking about, or are you thinking about integrating any of the Beacon technology?
We've had discussions about beacons. We're kind of in the process of building a mobile app, and particularly with mobile order, we're going to be piloting a couple stores in Atlanta. So for us, it's kind of, we want to deliver a great experience. So certainly the fast casual space has done great with the mobile ordering. So Chipotle, if anybody does, it's Moe's, you can do it. But for them, it's a little bit different. The food process is different. For us, we want to be careful about when we drop the fries. So we want to deliver, obviously, the freshest experience possible. So we've explored a little bit of how that could work. If you download the app, you place a mobile order, and then if we have beacons in the restaurant, once you drive in, it pings us potentially, and then that's when we can drop the order. Mm-hmm. So those are types of things we're looking at potentially. It may be a forced check-in or beacons or something like that, but I think we've talked a little bit about kind of how that experience looks like. What's the best experience? Certainly, Taco Bell and Chick-fil-A are testing it, and we're looking at it too. Of is it going to be a great experience, and how we can deliver that using technology to help us get that information of when we can make the food the freshest for you.
Josh, you have the funnest job. How do we make your fries the freshest?
Nobody likes cold curly fries, I tell you that. I get many tweets about cold curly fries.
That cures a real disease, which is the best scenario, right?
Laura is developing our beacon strategy, so I can talk about it better than she can.
Lots of testing. That's actually how I know Ryan. I was on a South by Southwest panel with him called Beyond the Beacon, and we were beating it up big time. And what we were talking about then is it's very relevant to answering this right now, that is a great technology of the should or could. And there's not a single person in this room or in the world that wants to walk into space and have beacons blowing up your phone. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between an ad and something that was of value. If it was something that was of value that you say thank you to, then you did the right thing. And NRF last year was all about data, and this year was all about beacons, and people are just looking at it wrong. They're looking at it as this thing to, oh, we got trapped rats, we can go fire off stuff at them, rather than, wow, this is a way that we might be able to track what people are doing in a positive way, and maybe give them one or two little clues that we care about them. Something that would acknowledge that they're there, maybe say thank you, or make their fries always hot. One way that's going to give you some kind of value around the experience. But it's funny because once you get in and you start to play with these things, we've got them all over right now. There's so many challenges with bleed between zones and being to locate that something happened in this area versus this area, or even how far out they can radiate in a certain amount of space. And it's one of those things, it's a really fun technology, but we're trying to figure out how to use it as a gun, but figure out the bullets to how to use it appropriately. And
especially when you compare it to something like what you had talked about before with the home improvement store that should not be named, that shall not be named, which is far more precise in location.
Yeah. I mean, a case in point is, I'm going to date myself, but Did you guys ever remember the Kmart Blue Light Special? Like, that's a case in point. Like, who is going to be upset if you walk in and every time you walk in the store, you get some crazy town promotion that's 30 minutes and that's it, and it's really good and based on your likes and preferences, right? That's a great example of doing it because it's going to give you a little more reason to go there versus there. What happened?
Josh mentioned NetBase that you're using for social listening. Are there any other tools that you all are employing in collecting all of this data and analyzing it, or are you all really doing it by hand?
Luckily, I do not have to analyze it, and I am lucky enough to have a team of people who do that, and so there are maybe like 20 full-time people who are experts not in the platforms necessarily, but in here's what I want to learn. Like, I come to them and say I want to learn this, and they know the right vendors to use. So I think that the actual like data mining is happening probably on the agency side, but it's coming through someone who actually works at AT&T and is checking it and making sure that it's useful learnings to us and that it matches all the other things that we've learned, and then it comes to me. So I think we use a mix of it all.
Are you, or even in the room, are you all working on developing omni-channel dashboards? Yeah, yeah. It's expensive. Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to ask that because I feel like if you asked maybe a year or two ago, it seemed like everyone was pursuing it, and maybe because of cost, or maybe because of what you were saying before about it's more important for us to have those little insights versus everything. Started to see, in my eyes, less of a need or less of a demand for a lot of those pricing platforms. I'm just curious. Anyways, sure.
Can you guys talk a little bit about how you might use competitive data, or even the concept or tactic of social conquesting or poaching, and where that falls in the boundary of what you talked about? Maybe you shouldn't because you can, or can't remember who mentioned that, but can you talk a little bit about that tactic, and is that kind of acceptable in what you've seen?
We have a lot of competitive data, and we have just a very aggressive category. So we're always collecting what's mostly price points and what's happening with our competitors, what they're going to do, what they're investing in, who they're going to buy today, and what's that going to mean for us in the future. I don't think we use it to make marketing decisions, but not on a daily basis level. I mean, there are parts of our marketing team that are constantly looking at competitive and deciding what offers we're going to have in the future based on that. But from what I do in marketing, what another advertiser is doing or what a competitor that I have is doing isn't really going to change what I'm bringing to market. So I'm always looking at it, but it's more from afar. I'm not changing direction of any of my campaigns based on that, unless they happen to use the hashtag I was planning to use, or like something that's a little more tactical.
Well, I fringe story again, shocking. Because I look at things from the experience side, not the pure data side. We use our little wonderkin behavioral psychologists to look at competitive in a unique way. And I'll tell a quick story. So we had just been pitching the Microsoft stores for just a project, and we were looking at what is there about the store experience that could be unique compared to, of course, Apple, right? And she went in and she went through this really interesting MTurk study where first she was looking for what kind of people are super allegiant to Microsoft versus Apple. And you had to pick between two pictures. This is me, this or this, this or this, this or this, this or this. It's real subconsciously oriented. It's really cool. And then it was, before you got into an interaction with this friend versus this friend, what were your expectations and what happened after? And then she cross-correlated it all, and it was so interesting to find out that people who are very allegiant to Microsoft are typically introverts, and when they reach out to the brand for some kind of support, they're doing it because they want immediate help and really great help, and if they're in the store, perfect help. where you would think, well, they're introverts. They don't want anyone interacting with them. Well, then we went over to Apple and we found that a lot of them were introverts too, but they were creative people and they really wanted to be there to experience and create, which is not surprising. But what was interesting was that people who adore Apple going into the store came out happy. And if they were kind of neutral, they came out unhappy. When people went into Microsoft neutral, they always came out happy. So that was so interesting for us. Like, well, wow, what about the experience is falling down on both sides? And when you got a little deeper, it's that there was this burgeoning, emerging trend that no one was vocalizing, but we're seeing behaviorally and through sentiment of people feeling like all of a sudden they used to be part of the Apple tribe, but they were starting to feel like they weren't cool enough in the store. And they weren't getting the same level of support they used to.
Your expectation.
Yes. So where do you want to go? Right there for Microsoft is make it the best experience possible and turn neutrality into delight at all points, right? So that's a weird story, but you know, there's some golden stuff in there, you know?
Very cool. Sure.
I have one question. I think Josh mentioned very early, and it's probably also to the entire panel, because you have brands and agencies. So Josh, you mentioned you received those 200-page reports, which you love to go through because it brings so much to your day. So I'm obviously trying to but isn't it the brand's responsibility that going forward, maybe the brand is picking a technology platform which they feel it fits very well to their needs, and then is giving the agencies some kind of guidelines to utilize some kind of APIs, so that was information which you collect by doing monthly new campaigns, probably even utilizing different agencies, that those information are not siloed up and just end up in a report. No, but they're actually then across campaigns are collecting, and it's not anymore that I just take a picture at a certain time, which is valid at that point. But no, I take a movie for that brand. I actually really, I would say, record consumers' engagement across, because obviously our behavior as well as our needs are changing over time, right? And I think maybe it was a question to the entire panel. How do you see from a brand perspective, what do you do today? Do you see that as not a big problem? And then maybe from an agency perspective, do you feel that you have to reinvent yourself by maybe even educating brands on that might be the way to go?
I love your question. I'm very passionate about it because, like, working on an agency side, but then working on the brand side, my agency side goes, give me the data. Don't tell me if I was successful or not. I want to own that data, and I want to. How am I supposed to give you what you want? How am I supposed to really immerse myself in your business if you don't give me the data to immerse myself? Like, there's only so many store visits I can do. Like, I need this ongoing data, and I need to have my own team of people who are really looking at trends and pulling out insights that no one else can pull out, and that's what you want your agency to do. But from the brand side, I'm always disappointed in that, and they never do a good job. They never do that. There's just a crazy amount of turnover. You never really get consistency. It seems like there's an agenda, and so you can't really have that honest discussion with your agency about what you're really seeing in the data. And I think that's why we have our own separate team. And there's a lot of pros and cons to that too. But what my internal data and analytics team thinks is happening ongoing is very different than when I sit down with my agency team, and they never agree. And so I'm in the middle and just have to say, well, here's what we're doing. Or I'm going to take this part, or thank you, I'll take this. We're going to go do that. So I struggle with what you're asking because the amount of trust that it would have to be such a trusting agency relationship, and you would have to be, like we were talking about before, where you go, we have a problem, we're going to fix it together, and not always, it's so hard to allow someone into all that data and give you, especially tell anything you don't want to hear. It's so hard.
That's very interesting. So I think time is about up. Thank you so much for the wonderful discussion. We'll just give a round of applause for